They didn't notice each other at first, not really. The gym was loud in its own way, gloves hitting pads, bodies hitting the mat, breath heavy in the air. She came to MMA training to clear her head, to feel strong again after a long period of self-doubt. He came because fighting was the only place where his thoughts went quiet. On the first day, they trained on opposite sides of the mat, focused, serious, barely looking up. To her, he was just another guy in the gym, confident, maybe a little intimidating. To him, she was just another beginner, determined but guarded. Nothing about that first training hinted at anything more. It changed slowly, almost invisibly. They started pairing up for drills, not by choice at first, just because the coach pointed and said their names. He noticed how she never quit around early, even when she was exhausted. She noticed how he adjusted his strength without being asked, how he corrected her technique without ego. Between rounds, they exchanged short comments about footwork, balance, breathing, practical words that slowly became familiar. After training, they sometimes stretched near each other, sharing silence that didn't feel awkward. Sweat, effort, and mutual respect built something neither of them named. Weeks passed, and training became the highlight of their days. They pushed each other harder, not competitively, but with trust. When she doubted herself, he reminded her why she started. When he trained too aggressively, she grounded him, forcing him to slow down and focus. They laughed more now, teased each other lightly, shared protein bars and tired smiles. Outside the gym, they finally talked, first about training, then about life. About fears that had nothing to do with fighting. About control, vulnerability, and why learning to fall properly mattered just as much outside the cage as inside it. One evening after a hard sparring session, they sat on the edge of the mat long after everyone else had left. The gym was quiet, almost peaceful. Bruised, tired, honest. She admitted that MMA taught her how to trust her body again. He admitted it taught him how to trust people. The realization settled between them naturally. What they were building wasn't about attraction alone, but about seeing each other clearly in moments of weakness and strength. Their first kiss didn't happen dramatically. It happened simply, after a shared laugh, when neither felt the need to protect themselves anymore. They didn't call it fate. They called it timing, effort, and showing up consistently. In the gym, they learned how to fight. Together, they learned how not to run from connection. And every time the bell rang to start another round, they stepped forward knowing that the strongest bond they had built wasn't in the cage, but in the space between them. After that quiet evening in the empty gym, something shifted between them, subtle but impossible to ignore. Training felt different now, heavier with awareness, lighter with trust. They still worked just as hard, still pushed through exhaustion and sore muscles, but there was a new layer beneath it all, attention. He noticed how she breathed before a difficult combination, how her shoulders tensed when she doubted herself. She noticed when his focus drifted, when old frustration crept into his movements, and without saying much, she helped pull him back. Their connection didn't distract them from training, it sharpened it. The coach noticed the change too, the way they moved together, the way they respected each other's limits without ever going easy. Outside the gym, life slowly started to intertwine. They grabbed food after late sessions, sitting in silence at first, then talking until the place closed. Conversations moved beyond MMA, beyond routines and schedules, into stories neither shared easily. She talked about why she needed to feel strong again, about moments when she felt invisible in her own life. He talked about anger, about how fighting had once been the only language he trusted, and how learning control was harder than learning to strike. There was no rush to label what they were becoming. Both of them knew how fragile beginnings could be, especially when built between bruises and vulnerability. There were challenges, of course. Days when training frustrations spilled into personal space, when tempers ran short and words landed too sharply. Once, after a hard sparring session, they argued, not loudly, but intensely, about boundaries, about fear of mixing something so personal with something so demanding. For a moment, it felt easier to pull away, to return to being just training partners. But neither of them wanted that anymore. They talked it through slowly, awkwardly, honestly, learning that communication required as much discipline as fighting. That night, sitting on the mat again, they realized that what scared them wasn't losing each other, it was how much they already mattered. Over time, their relationship found balance. They learned when to be partners and when to be fighters, when to push and when to protect. Victories felt better shared. Losses felt lighter carried together. MMA had taught them how to endure pain, but love was teaching them how to endure closeness, commitment, and growth. And every time the bell rang, signaling another round, they stepped forward not just as athletes, but as two people who had learned that the strongest connections are forged where effort, respect, and courage meet.